So Mike, I say countdown, then you. Okay.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Good evening, Asia. Welcome to the last episode of Birding Destinations here on the Asian Bird Fair Online Talk. Thank you for joining us tonight on Zoom and here on Facebook Live. Tonight we bring you to Peru with Gunar Engblom of Kolibri Expedition. So if you're ready, let's say Buenos dias, Peru. ¿Cómo estás, Gunnar? How are you, Gunnar?
Buenos dias, Mike. I'm good here. Thank you for inviting me. This is going to be quite
We're,
exciting.
we're all excited to know why we have to go to Peru. So if you're ready, we're all ready.
All right. Shoot, I'm going to share my screen here and hope everyone can see that. Um, just get my glasses on so I can see what I'm doing. Now, am I sharing, right? And I will put
Yes.
that on like full page, right? Does that work?
Yes.
Okay. All right. I actually started with the wrong slide. Let's go back here a little. Oh, wait, can I do this a little bit better? All right, do this backwards. Okay, so here we go. Well, thank you everyone for joining me this morning here in Peru. It's morning over where you are. Maybe it's night already. So I'm having my morning coffee while Richard is having his evening beer. So we just woke up here in Peru. And I am actually going to answer Mike's question, why Peru? Well, right now, Peru is actually doing pretty well. So if anyone's sort of considering traveling, if you are allowed to leave your country, I know some of you aren't, but those of you that can do, Peru is in a good state right now. International flights have resumed. We flights that are less than 8 hours. That means that all of the American hubs are open to people that want to visit Peru. The only thing you have to take into account is that you have to have a PCR COVID test that is less than 72 hours. And you also, while you're flying and when you arrive to Peru, you will have to wear not only a face mask, but also a screen. And that is also mandatory on the flights. Okay. So it is quite possible to visit Peru right now. Numbers are going down. Hospital beds are getting less occupied. And it feels the atmosphere is a little bit more relaxed, even though people are still wearing masks, of course, in public. There are lots of COVID policies in place when you go to restaurants and shopping malls, etc. The forum are reduced to just 50% in most places. So just came back from traveling in Central Peru with two foreigners, two tourists, two birders, one from the UK and one from the US. And we were out in the field for 25 days and didn't run into any major problems and saw lots of birds, of course. So that was quite nice for a change to be able to travel again. And so in this talk, I will talk a little bit about our classical circuits, the sort of main circuits of Peru. They include the classic southern circuit that is sort of along the main tourist track that everybody that are non-birders when they come to Peru visit. Then we have the northern Peru birding route, which is has been heavily marketed in the last decade or so, and it has some spectacular bird, including the one of our logo, the marvelous spatchel tail. But lots of nice birds and lots of good new birding lodges and a lot of resources also for bird photography. And then I'm going to come back closer to my own home, which is Central Peru, Lima is situated in central Peru, and from here we can go inland and we can cover a lot of different habitat in a very short time. And it's also less expensive because we don't have to use any internal flights for that. So those are the sort of three major routes that we have in Peru. So to start with, Peru, for most people, well, they will probably not come for the birds. They will come for our very rich cultural history and the foundation of the Inca Empire, of course, that Peru is built upon. And here is a very big bird that you have to see from the sky. It's a hummingbird. It's one of the Nazca lions, and you have to use a flight to appreciate these figures in the desert. That I think this is about 112 meters long or something like that. It's an incredibly large hummingbird, and it's also the speculations whether these were made by aliens or if it's the Peruvians themselves that have made them. You've probably heard the name Däniken. He had some theories about this some 30 years ago or so. Another area that people want to visit is the Titicaca Lake, of course, so that we share with Bolivia. It's one of the, they usually call it the highest navigable lake in the world. I don't know if that's absolutely correct, but there used to be at least a steamliner that crossed the lake from Peru to Bolivia. And it's also famous for these floating islands where people build their homes on reed bed islands that are sort of anchored into the shallow water of the Titicaca Lake. And from here, people do fishing and hunting and even have agriculture on these small little islands. They can grow potatoes on there. But the main draw of Peru is obviously one of the new seven wonders, Machu Picchu, probably the most popular when they did this contest a few decades ago about the nominating the new seven wonders. Peru was the favorite and number one on that list. And the other ones are, as you probably know, they are in Rome, the Colosseum, the Petra in Jordan, the Christ statue in Rio de Janeiro, Chichen Itza in Mexico, the Chinese Wall, and I always forget one or two. But yeah, anyway, those are the new seven wonders. And Machu Picchu has opened again for tourism, also again with a limited number of people allowed to be visiting at one time. One has to make reservations and so forth. But yeah, you can come and visit Machu Picchu anytime. And in recent years, the new thing in Peru, and it's sort of very popular thing, is the Peruvian food. It's not like we haven't eaten before, but the rest of the world had all of a sudden discovered the Peruvian cuisine. And this is the star dish, the most famous dish called ceviche. It's made of raw fish that is marinated in lime and chili peppers and with red onion. And then this is served, and also coriander. And then this is served with sweet potatoes and corn that is roasted but not popped. And it's one of the favorite dishes. Much of this gourmet revolution is because of a famous Peruvian chef called Gaston Acurio, who has opened restaurants in many places, in many capitals around the world, and making this Peruvian food the flagship of the Peruvian cuisine is perhaps the ceviche, has become very famous. Another also popular dish that the tourists gets quite horrified about is the guinea pig. Here you can see the guinea pig roasted, and that's a traditional dish that is eaten on special occasions like weddings and birthdays, etc., especially high up in the Andes. and some of the tourists like to try that out also. There's not a lot of meat on a guinea pig, and yeah, I think I think I prefer them as pets rather than having them as a meal. But there are a lot of very, very colorful birds in Peru. And I think more and more, even those general tourists that are only going for the culture will discover the birds also. There's certainly a lot of birds in Peru that would attract sort of non-birders as well. And the more resources we get to see these birds with feeding tables and so forth, I think the easier it will be to also market Peru as a birding destination or bird watching. Bird watching can be done also by sort of non-birders. And on this picture, we see golden tanager, we see yellow scarf tanager, which is an endemic to Peru, and there is paradise tanager and scarlet-bellied mountain tanagers. All these can be seen on the east slope in the cloud forests of the east slope and the foothills all over Peru, actually. And so even if you go to south or to northern Peru, you are still able to see this. Then we have, of course, the hummingbirds of Peru that are also very, very popular, also among non-birders. The star bird is the marvelous spatule tail, of course, up here in the left upper corner. And that occurs only in the Amazonas department in northern Peru. Then we have the sword-billed hummingbird with a body that is bigger than, well, as long as the body. The bill is as long as the body. There is royal sun angel in northern Peru, and the red-crested, rufous-crested coquette that is also in the lowlands, in the foothills in the lowlands from north to south, and can be seen at various places at feeders. The national bird of Peru is the Andean cock of the rock, again on the east slope in the foothills and the mountains. There are places where you can just sort of get off the vehicle, walk down 5 meters or so, and you will be on a platform, and the lake is about 10 meters away. Fantastic for photography. And this is on the Manor Road in southern Peru, where you can have this easy access to the Andean cock of the rock. One of the starbirds that I've been working with a lot the last couple of months now, we're setting up a project I will tell you a little bit more about later, is the Andean condor. And this has traditionally 2 sites in Peru where you go to see that, in Colca Canyon in the south. Recently, a couple of years ago, there was a new spot in Cusco called Chonta. And the last place now is in Lima, where we're setting up this project where we can also see condors. I will show a video later, hopefully this will work, a video that I've been filming with my phone. And it's quite spectacular. It's only 3 hours from Lima, and we've seen up to 26 condors at one time in this place. All right. Oh dear. Okay, so another tourist attraction. Yeah, if people could turn off their mics, please, that would help. Thank you. Okay, so another tourist attraction that also non-birders go to in southern Peru are these famous macaws. Here on this picture, we see 3 different macaws. There's the red and green here on top. There's a scarlet macaw, and there's a blue and yellow macaw. They come to these licks of clay, especially during the dry season, and they will actually feed on these clay particles. And it works a little bit like kaolin, like tranquilizing the toxins and the substances that they can't really digest that well, because the leaves and the flowers that they will eat during the dry season and the fruit, they may have some toxic compounds, and this sort of neutralizes those compounds. And this is quite a spectacle. And the best time to visit this would be from May to October, November, more or less. It's less active during the rainy season, so it's something to take into account when you come to Peru, and if you go to the lowlands and you want to see this amazing show with the macaws. And the best macaw lick, I think, is the ones that are on the Tambopata River, because you see all these three macaws. There are also other parrots that come into the lick, a lot of smaller parrots and parrotlets and parakeets as well. And all in all, there's just hundreds of birds flying in the sky at the same time, so all different colors. All right, so let's get into the main section here. That was a little bit of an introduction. Peru is it's a fairly sort of recent tourist destination, because we had a lot of violence in the 70s and the 80s, and the beginning of the 90s as well. And it was the Shining Path. You probably heard of this infamous guerrilla terrorist organization in Peru. Well, they were sort of pushed back when they captured the leader in 1993, and from then on, most of the country sort of started getting liberated, and little by little the tourism has come back, and it's now, I think we're 9th or something like that in the Americas. So certainly a lot more that can be done in improvements in lodges, etc. But we are getting about 4.4 million tourists per year, and so it's a fairly large country. It's about 3 times the size of California. We have 30 million inhabitants. 10 million of those live in Lima, so a third live in Lima. Lima is situated here in the center of Peru, close to the coast. We're not at altitude here. There are about 1,870 species recorded for Peru. There are always new ones added. We actually got a boost of, I think it was about 7 species just recently, with when the Rufous antpitta was split, and there were 3 new tapaculos described. That's just this year, so that is quite exciting, and we're getting more and more species that way. Traditionally, the people here in Peru, they will divide the country in the coast, where Lima is, all along the coast. This is the sort of most populous area in Peru. And then we have the Sierra, the Andes, and the Selva, the rainforest. So it's a transect of coast, mountains, and rainforest. However, for birding purposes, that transect is best done in sort of 3 sections: north, south, and central. And at each of these, if you make a cross section, it's quite easy to get 500 species plus in just one cross section. And all of these have more than 1,000 species recorded altogether, about 1,200, 1,300, if you do a cross section like this in any part of the country. So it's extremely diverse, and every little valley here has different endemics. So it means that you cannot really do all of Peru in just one go. You need more than one trip. I played around a little bit to try to set up shorter trips for different areas in Peru, and I came up with 10 different trips of 5 days. So that's 50 days of birding, and I still don't cover all the areas. So it's definitely a multi-visit destination. So let's continue. Let's start then with the classic southern route, and here we have. This is the same route that people that come and visit Machu Picchu will do. They will start in Lima, that I showed you on the map. Then they will go down to Paracas. They will continue via Nazca, to the Nazca lines that I showed you on another picture, and then they will eventually arrive to Arequipa, and possibly do the Colca Canyon, which is in here, where they can see the condors, and then they continue to the Titicaca Lake, and many times they will travel overland or they will fly to Cusco and then visit Machu Picchu. And if they have more time, they will sort of venture into the rainforest. And most of the birders will do that. This is the famous Mano Road that goes here. This is a new tarmac road that goes down to Puerto Maldonado. You can also fly down to Puerto Maldonado. And from there, you can visit this big national park here, and also the Manu National Park in this area. So if we start in Colca Canyon, it's one of the most dramatic canyons in the world. And there we can see lots of condors at the same time. A lot of people come here just to see the condors. There's about 200,000 people coming to Colca Canyon per year. Not this year though, but it sort of gives you a little bit of a perspective how popular this site is. And then people will go to the Titicaca Lake, and here there is an endemic bird. It's the Titicaca flightless grebe. It's for the birder the main reason to go to Titicaca, but it's also a species that we share with Bolivia. And then of course we continue to Cusco, and Cusco was the capital of the Inca Empire, and there are lots of Inca remains in the city. A lot of the churches and the sort of bigger houses are built on foundations, on Incan walls, and they are perfectly fitted together. Massive pieces of rock that are fitted together. And mind you, the Incas, they did not have the steel, they did not have the wheel, and they did not have any horses to actually pull these big pieces of blocks from one point to the other. So everything was done by manpower, and I guess they had to chisel out these rocks little by little, and a bit of trial and error to fit them in. And there are some interesting studies that show how this could have been done. Within these walls, there are some, you can see sort of indents, and they think they've pulled them up on poles and then chiseled the part underneath to fit with the fabricated stone that they put on top. That way they didn't have to lift it and take it up several times, but just had to fit it in at one go. Anyway, so the sort of the end of this tour would be Machu Picchu. This is the citadel that is very beautifully situated on top of a saddle between this Huayna Picchu mountain and the Machu Picchu mountain that you would have behind you, and it's circled almost a complete, well, at least 270-degree circle that the river does. Get back on the front. The river does around this sort of saddle that comes out into the river, and the sun would hit this site on the winter solstice almost right when the sun comes up at the Sun Temple. So they think it has been like an observatory in Incan times. The interesting thing about Machu Picchu was that it was totally forgotten when the Spaniards arrived. So nobody had heard about it for a long time until 1911, when Hiram Bingham made some explorations in this area and found these ruins with the help of local people. And near Machu Picchu, you can see things like the torrent duck. They're quite common in the river there. If you have a few more days near Cusco, you will visit Abra Malaga. Abra Malaga is a very endemic rich area, and it has some polylepis woodland, fantastic scenery with beautiful mountains. You can do some hikes there. And there's both temperate forest and subtropical forest, and there's some dry woodland, and lots of endemics, including this Royal Synclodus that lives in the polylepis woodland. Now there is also a place nearby where they put up feeders, and it's a great place to see sword-billed hummingbird up close. The main attraction from Cusco, however, is the Mano Road that goes down to the Mano Park, and it cuts through lots of different habitats. There are more than 1,000 birds recorded on this route. And you start in Cusco and you go down this road through, or first through interandean valleys, and then you come down to some lodges up in the subtropics. One is called Waikecha. You come further down to, well, you pass Pacartambo and you come down to something called Pilcopata. And down there you have two other lodges called Amazonia Lodge and, well, there are several lodges as well. And the other one is called Villa Carmen that we use. We also use the lodge that is called Cock of the Rock Lodge. And all this area is, well, you need a minimum of 5 days. We do a 5-day tour down this, but you can easily spend 2 weeks. And then you can venture lower down into the Manu National Park proper, where you also have Macaulay's, etc. So one of the first stops is the Cock of the Rock Lake, which I told you about, which is only like 5 meters off the road. When you come down to the lowlands, you may see the amazing Huatzin. It's a unique bird in its own family. It looks a little bit prehistoric. It's also a bird that the young has claws on the wings. So when they are pretty miserable creatures. They're sort of very defenseless. They can't fly, but they can swim. So if they get a predator coming close to the nest, they will simply drop down into the water. They swim with their rudimentary wings, and since they have the claws on the wings, they can climb up the next tree and sort of that way escape predators like snakes or similar. They are also known for smelling very bad. They are total leaf eaters. They eat these aralia leaves and fruits that virtually no other birds feed upon. And as leaves are very hard to digest, they have a bacteria in their guts or their crops that will dissolve these leaves, and hence they will smell. So it's not a bird, even though it's fairly big, it's not hunted by any means, and it's quite common in these marshy areas in the lowlands of the Amazon. And I mentioned the Mikolik already. There is one also on the Manu Road at the very bottom that you can visit. It does only have red and green macaws, though. These other two big macaws do not come to the lick there, but you usually see those up close anyway during your trip into the lowlands. All right, so let's head on then to the northern circuit, and this is the one that has been popularized by Prom Peru at the bird fairs, etc. And there are astonishing amount of very nice birds to see here. It starts in the western part, where we share this region, this endemic bird region called the Tumbesian region. We share that with Ecuador, and there are a number of birds that you can only find in this region. And the ones that are special for Peru are, for instance, the white-winged guan and the Peruvian, the Tumbes tyrant. And then you continue over the pass, the Purcuya Pass, where you get things like pure. Eventually, you come into the dry Marañon Valley, which has Peru, and eventually going eastwards, you will come to the famous area of Pomacochas, where the marvelous spatchetail lives, and the Abra Patricia area, where you find the long-whiskered owlet and a lot of other endemic birds, such as the Lulus or Johnson's toady tyrant. And slowly but surely, you will come into lower areas near Moyobamba. It's like a plateau, a savanna-like plateau with some rainforest patches at around 1,000 meters. and then we drop down to Tarapoto. From Tarapoto, you can also make a flight into Iquitos in the heart of the Amazon, the northern Amazon of Peru. So if we start a trip on the west, we have a lodge called Chaparri. It's dry woodland here. This is one of the best places to see the white-winged guan up here in this picture, a bird that was known from only one specimen from 1877, and it was thought it was lost until 100 years later. It was rediscovered, and in dry forest. They thought uh, the problem with this bird was that they were looking at the wrong places. They thought it was a bird that had lived in the mangroves, but it turned out that it lived in the foothills of this dry forest in the Tumbesian area, and it has only been recorded so far in Peru. And there are no records in Ecuador, which is kind of strange because the first birds were actually collected very close to the Ecuadorian border. But here at Chaparri, they have made the reintroduction program, and now I think it's still critically endangered, but the project is going so well that it's almost on the sort of verge of being downgraded to endangered only because of all these conservation projects that are in place and the reintroduction projects as well. And as I mentioned, also the Tumbes tyrant is another bird that we can see in this area. The lodging here at Chaparri is in these rustic adobe buildings, but they are fully equipped inside with hot showers and solar panels and electric light and so forth, and very, very comfortable. And the food is just amazing. And here's the Chaparri mountain here that you can see in the background. Very close to Chaparri is another forested area called Bosque Pomac, and this is a great place to see some of the endemic birds that are unique to Peru, including the Peruvian plant cutter down here and the rufous flycatcher. It's also a very good place to see the white-tailed jay that we share with Ecuador, another Tumbesian endemic. As I mentioned, we go over the pass at Abra Patricia, coming into the Marañón on the other side, is one of the lowest passes in the Andes. It's only about 2,200 meters high. And here we find some mountainous birds of this region that are also shared with Ecuador, some of them. They are this black cowl saltator, the Pura chat tyrant is endemic for Peru, and here is the elegant crescent chest, a unique family. The crescent chest is, I think it has only like 4 or 5 members. We can see 2 different crescent chests on this tour, because when we slip over into the Marañón side of the valley, a dry inter-Andean valley with lots of endemism as well, we find the Marañón endemic, Marañón crescent chest, which has these white fringes to the coverts and is somewhat richer colored underneath as well. We also find the Peruvian pigeon there, or the Marañón pigeon, and a subspecies of the northern slaty antshrike that is endemic also to the Marañón Valley. This is in the northern part of the Marañón on this route. We also go to the southern section, and it has some other birds. Here we find the buff-bridled Inca finch, one of the prettiest of the Inca finches, I would say. There are 5 Inca finches altogether. All of them are in Peru, and we can see on a circuit in northern Peru, we see 3 of these. We also have the Marañón thrush and the yellow-faced parrotlet, a rare sort of version of the Pacific parrotlet that you find quite widespread on the western deserts of Peru, all the way down to Nazca now. But this yellow-faced parrotlet is much rarer and only in the Marañón Valley. We continue east and we start going uphill again, and we will come to Wembo. And Wembo is a place where they have a little bit of a reforestation project. There's a Peruvian NGO called Ecoan who started this project, and they get funding from, among others, American Birding Association, Conservation. No, sorry, American Bird Conservancy, and they have also put up feeders here where the marvelous spatule-tail come, and the marvelous spatule-tail is perhaps the most beautiful hummingbird in the world. There is a group called the 363 Hummingbirds on Facebook that I'm administrator for, and I've done a Hummingbird World Cup that you can check out. Right now we're on quarterfinals, I think. So you can go in there and vote and see which will be the most popular hummingbird in the world. My bet is that Marvelous Spatule-tail will be in the final. Whether we'll win or not, we'll see eventually. But it's absolutely a must-see bird. And what it does is it will, during November to March, April, more or less, they have these leks. The males will gather in small groups and they will start performing this dance, either in flight or from a perch like this. They will wave their feathers up into the air, the spatches up into the air, and they also do this in midair. They flex their wings and they wave the feathers up and down, and waste a lot of energy. There's a fantastic film sequence on BBC that you can check out. I think you will have to do a search. It's not on YouTube now, but if you do a search for BBC, and Attenborough is narrating this display of the marvelous spatule-tail, it's quite amazing to see. And well, here's another picture. These are made by Max Vaux that came on a trip some years ago with us, and he managed to get these great photos of the marvelous spatule-tail in doing its display. So after that, we will continue to the Abra Patricia area, and here there are lots of hummingbird feeders. There's a good lodge called the Owlet Lodge, and there is also a smaller place with only 2 cabins called Fundo Alto Nieva, where one can stay as well. But this is a very, very interesting forest. It's a very stunted forest on the ridge tops, and it has a very unique flora and fauna. And one of the birds that you can find there is this Lulu's toady tyrant, or also known as Johnson's toady tyrant. And here is also the place for the Royal Sun Angel, beautiful hummingbird. And it now comes to feeders at the Alto Nieva feeding station. It's also a place where they started feeding ant pittas. This is the same recipe that has been used from Ecuador. If you remember the previous talk here, you were showed ant pittas of Angel Paz, where he was the guy that came up with the idea of feeding them worms. These used to be the most difficult birds to see in all of the neotropics. When I first heard that they were feeding them from the hand with worms in Ecuador, I could not believe it. I've been struggling to see these ant pittas crawling on the ground, very dense forest, doing imitations, very, very difficult to see. And now they have these feeding stations. This is a rusty tinged ant pitta, endemic to Peru, of course. And here's another one, also endemic, which is the ochre-fronted ant pitta. This is the smaller genus, Gralaricula genus. The previous one was Gralaria. And these can be seen at this Fundo Alto Nieva. Both the Owlet Lodge and Fundo Alto Nieva has this mythical owlet also, the long-whiskered owlet. This was another very, very difficult bird for many years. I think I did about 6 or 7 tries to try to see one before I actually saw one eventually. Very, very difficult. and now there are a few places. The story goes that it was collected first in the 1970s from mist nets. Nobody had seen them alive, and it was totally in mystery. Everyone tried to sort of go out at night, listen for weird sounds. Nobody knew what it sounded like until there was an LSU expedition in I think this was in the late, could have been like 1998 or so. They made, or 1995, they made an expedition into the same area, but up the actually up the Patricia mountain, Cerro Patricia itself. And one of the researchers came back with an owl in the bag, sort of that they collected in the nets. And they sort of, when they opened it and saw it was the long-whiskered owlet, everyone was in shock. And it was like, wow. So they kept it in a tent, and that way they got a recording. So that recording was used later to try to get this bird to call back. And eventually, after a long time, it was found at a few places. And it was not only in stunted forest, as was previously thought, but also in rather mature forest. It's a very small owl. They were considering it may actually be flightless to start with, but it does fly. So now we know, but it doesn't have a very sort of developed sternum. Anyway, you should probably sort of give it a few days, because if the weather is bad, they will not sing, so it will be hard to see. All right. Also further down, it's a great place to see the Rufous crested coquette and Moyobamba. There are good places for that there. Also to feeders, there are a lot of hummingbird feeders everywhere on the northern circuit, and you can see this amethyst wood star, for instance. Another fairly recently described bird is the scarlet-banded barbet. We do an extension from the northern route south. It used to also be a very hard bird to get. You had to climb this mountain. You had to do an expedition for over 7-8 days or so. You had to fly first to Pucallpa from Lima, and then from Pucallpa you had to do a smaller flight into another place called Pampa Hermosa. There you hired a little boat called Peque Peque. They call Peque Peque because they go really slow with a one-cylinder engine. They go Peque 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 Peque. That's what they sound like. And it takes 2 days to go up the river, and then it took 2 days to climb this mountain to get on to the very top to see the scarlet-banded barbet. Until this guy, Todd Mark, was doing some research. He was following this trail he had located on the map. And so he said, well, if I just take this trail up to the highlands, maybe I will be able to see this scarlet-banded barbet. So he came up to this place that was a former oil or natural gas drill platform, and they called it Plataforma. And there was a little village up there, and actually had a road coming up to it as well. He had just taken this trail. It's one of the worst roads in the world. So one needs special four-wheel drive to get up there. But you can see this scarlet-banded barbet. So the project has only, this place has only been around for, say, 6 years or so. And it's kind of sad to come up there because you see all this forest destruction along the road all the time. And you know that the barbet is in there, and you have to walk further and further away to find it. Recently, there was a new bird discovered at the same spot, and this was discovered by Josh Beck. It's called. It was described, I think, 2 years ago now. It's called the Cordillera Azul antbird, and the same there, a bird that was totally unexpected. Josh had some extra time. He actually hiked into the area, did not take the sort of rather expensive private jeeps, but he hitchhiked in and had sort of waited to get back. But he sort of said to himself, well, let me just explore this trail going down from the soccer field. And he had only walked in a couple of 100 meters, and he heard a sound that he was certain was not one that he had on his tapes. And it turned out to be this new antbird that looks somewhat similar to chestnut I think it's called, is it rufous-backed or chestnut-backed antbird of the Guyanan plateau. Ferruginous-backed, sorry, ferruginous-backed antbird. And it's somewhat similar to that, but totally different call. So it was described, and it lives in a understory on the ground. It walks on the ground in forest that is quite tall for being a foothill type of forest, where with lots of ferns, etc. underneath. And the place where it was first found is no longer there, so there's a lot of forest destruction in the area, and it's basically coffee farmers that are cutting down the forest. Hopefully, little by little, with more people coming to the area, tourists will understand that it's, well, the people in the area will understand that this is worth saving, and they will get some income from this as well. So finally, I'm looking at my watch here. I'm seeing that I'm sort of running out of time, but this is the Central Peru, and this is where I live in Lima, and we are doing a lot of projects here. I'm going to fast forward a little bit here. We have a close wetland called Pantanos de Villa that we go to, where we see the great grebe, the many-colored rush tyrant, beautiful bird, Peruvian thickney, and when we come down to the coast and the cliffs, we get the famous Inca tern and the red-legged cormorant, beautiful birds on the coast. Here's a red-legged cormorant in flight. It's also a great place to see blackish oyster catcher, and we do a little tour also around the islands to see the Humboldt penguin that is lives in colonies on the Peruvian and Chilean coast. One can do pelagics also. They are a little bit down at the moment. We used to have them from Lima, but there are some, well, a little bit of red tape to use the boats that we were using, and the port authorities said that they needed to invest some $20,000 in their boats to be able to take people further out, and the operators simply weren't interested, because they are quite happy to just sort of go around the island and throw people into the sea with floating devices to swim with the sea lions. That's their business. So unfortunately, now we only hire occasionally boats from Paracas further south. But if you go into the Humboldt Current, you are highly rewarded with things like the waved albatross, the Peruvian diving petrel, and the hornbees or ringed storm petrel, and the Markham storm petrel, among others. North of Peru is an oasis called, north of Lima is an oasis called Lomas de la Chay that has fog vegetation, where you can find least seed snipe, and in the cactus you find the cactus canistero on the dry side of this reserve. But my sort of thing that I really want to promote here is the Santa Eulalia Canyon, where we have started a new project to conserve condors. We actually are also going to build a hide with the help of a friend of ours that you know, Carles Santana from Spain. He's going to help us to do a feeding station and a hide for condors coming into this area. I'm just going to show you a little movie here that I made, a 2-minute movie with the condors flying from this lookout point. This is from Lima. And we have been going up every Saturday now, since they opened up a little bit, that we could do a little bit of local traveling, taking local Peruvians to see condors at close range. This is filmed only with my phone, an old iPhone 6. And it's quite astonishing, really, how close these condors come. And I had a group up here now on this when this was filmed, and they had been to Colca Canyon in the south 4 times, and they had only seen 2 condors when they were there. And now they came to Santa Eulalia, 3 hours from Lima, and they saw 25 condors. in to these cliffs to sleep in the afternoon. So they will pass by, and apparently these ones had just been feeding because they had their crops really filled with food items. Came extremely close. So other things you can see in Santa Eulalia Canyon is another Inca finch. This is the great Inca finch, and higher up in the valley you get the white cheek cotinga in Polylepis woodland. And if you cross over the pass that is at 4,900 meters, you get to these bogs around 4,700 meters, and they have the one of the most wanted birds perhaps for people that come to South America and if they like shorebirds. There is this diadine sandpiper plover, a unique bird of the highland bogs of Peru, Chile, and Bolivia. And one of the best places to see it is actually in Lima because it's only like 3 hours away. The altitude can be a problem, so it's a good idea to maybe have visited the islands before you do this trip. But we also do a day trips individuals left. Sorry. The lake is threatened by mining. There's mining residues coming into the lake, but it has been that way for a long time now. It's also a regulated lake. It's used, the water masses are used for hydroelectrical purposes for a dam that is further down, and obviously this creates differences in water level that can affect these birds as well. Very little is known actually what it is that limits the numbers to stay around 300 birds and not increasing. We have been trying to support a project here, trying to get some sort of more specific data from day to day to see how the numbers are varied. We haven't analyzed it yet, but we had this guy employed for about 2 years, taking measurements every day. His name is Cesar Ceballos. He's been out here in the forest. He is also the guy that can show you the Junine rail, a unique subspecies of the black rail, according to some authorities, and a good species according to others. It's quite isolated here in this lake, of course, and it's only endemic here. If you continue further north, one of my favorite spots on Earth is the Bosque Unchog. Here you find the biggest tanager in South America. It's the golden-backed mountain tanager, a very, very rare tanager that we scored on this my last trip to Central Peru. This is a photo taken a few years ago. Now it is rainy season there right now, but nevertheless, if you sort of play your cards right and you go and bird in the morning, you can still do some pretty good birding. And finally, for this area, this is a very dear project of mine. We are supporting the community lodge at Satipo Road. This is the old building. They built a new one right now, and we just been doing the first coordinations with the community. They are very happy to see Kolibri Expeditions administrating and improving and marketing the present lodge that is just one building right now, no walls. There are 8 beds. So our next project is to put in walls and separate so we make 4 rooms, make a little kitchen area, but above all to put up feeders and make it very bird friendly. That's the whole point, I think. So we will be doing that, and there are some fantastic birds to be seen in the area. some that are totally new to science, some that are not even described yet. They don't have names. Here is, oops, on this picture here is the black spectacled brushfinch. Here's the tapaculo that was unnamed for 40 years. It has just been described. It was used to be known as the undescribed milpo tapaculo in brackets. Now it's been described as jalca tapaculo, or jalca if you pronounce it in English. And it lives in this sort of grass, tussock grass and rocky places. Finally, it got a name. And here are two undescribed ones. One that I found is a wren called the plain-tailed. It's like similar to plain-tailed wren. It's in the Mantaro drainage. Don't know what we're going to call it yet. I've suggested M&M wren, but I don't know if that will go down well. Here is also an undescribed thornbird from the same area. So, well, I was going to say here also with Satipo Road. So since we're running a project, I have a page up called the Satipo Road, something with the Satipo Road project or lodge project, etc. There's a blog post. You can find it easily on my pages. And there's a fundraiser going on right now. And if you don't want to donate money, you know that Peru is open right now, and I'm actually selling 5 days for $999. So you can go and see these fantastic birds on the Satipo Road, help out the project at the same time, and get your birding done, your birding in the tropics done in spite of the COVID. So we will run these $999 tours for until March. Special price every week if we get at least well, we'll do it with one client or two clients or three clients. The price will still stay the same, yeah, $999. So there you go. Finally, I just wanted to mention a few unique things about our Kolibri expeditions trips. That it's some novel ideas that I've done a few talks on online that you can find on our YouTube channels about these ideas, and it's something that you guys can copy as well. It is, I think we have to find some novel approaches to bird watching trips. So what I've done in Peru is that I've selected the best tours that we have and made very short itineraries of only 5 days. So I have 3 itineraries right now, and they are called Birding Peru Anytime. The best birding itineraries of Peru that has most feeders, that have the best lodging, and are very accessible for almost anyone, and regardless of the kind of interest in birds that you have, if you're into photography or if you are into endemics, etc. And especially if you have a limited time. So these 5-day tours, usually they will run every Monday to Friday, so you can fly in one weekend and fly out the next if you only have that amount of time. And if you have more time, you can sort of put these back to back and get a very good cross sample of the best birds of Peru. So try to find the raisins of your countries and sort of set up these sort of very short itineraries showing the very, very best. That way you will target a larger market segment also of newbies, not only the hardcore birders that are in the end a very limited number. We need to popularize bird watching and make it more accessible to other people. Another idea I came up with also recently that we haven't tested yet because COVID came in between, but we have these fantastic places for bird photography in Peru now. And most of the, or at least many Asian bird watchers, they like to be in one spot, photograph the birds that are there. They don't want to go on trails because they can't carry their big tripods and the big lenses, etc. They'd rather wait for the birds to come to them. So we have set up a 12 to 13 day unguided bird photography tour. And so you don't need a guide. And if you don't need a guide, there are, of course, local personnel in each and every place. You just need that one driver that takes you to the different places. And some sort of a manual that you can put out in written, even Mandarin or in Japanese or whatever. You just have the same sort of manual in different languages. And then the photographers, of course, will know what birds to photograph, etc. So this is all under production, but it's something that I hope will work really, really well in the future. And hopefully we get a lot of Asian clients coming to do that. And the third novelty that we've done as well, we have tried this for some time now, but it's an idea of doing tiered pricing. What does this mean? Well, if you go online and you want to buy something, you will some services online, you will see these sort of different price levels. You have the sort of budget version that doesn't really, well, it's sort of trying it out, but it doesn't give you all the bells and whistles, right? And then you have the mid thing that is just about right. And then you have the deluxe version or the professional version that are if you're a heavy user or if you really want all the bells and whistles that you can possibly think of. Well, you can do the same thing in bird watching. So the one of the big costs for operating a bird tour on the long run is the transport and the guide that you will have on the tour. So if you can spread that out in a larger group, well, if you limit it to just sort of the high end budget people, well, maybe you don't get enough people in the group then to actually cover the costs, and it will become extremely expensive. Or on the other hand, if you have a low budget version of the tour, maybe you don't fill up with people that want more comfort, and again you have too small of a group. Well, rather than try to get the group size a little bit larger by having a flexible accommodation and flexible services. So what we've done is that we have a real sort of no frills budget version where we put the clients in hostels or even camping in some places. We don't include the dinners; they will be on their own. They don't have to do the list at the end of the night. They will all be on their eBird anyway, right? So it may not be that necessary. And then we have sort of our standard, but we also include then like a pro version we call it the Marvelous Spatchel Tail, the Marvelous Spatchel Tail Deluxe version, where they have everything included, including alcoholic drinks, etc., and the most comfortable lodging. So you can have a tiered pricing that way. And we also introduced, and this is only for the Southern Circuit, where there are lots of different hotels, Airbnbs, etc. We've done now the Southern Circuit with something that we call Kolibri Flex, and it means that if you take this budget version and not including all the bells and whistles that we provide, then you can have your dinners on your own. You can book your hotels on your own, and there are some of the excursions that are not included that you would pay extra for on the tour. So this could work really, really well. And finally, this is my last slide, so I'm going over time here now. And I also wanted to mention my new project, the Seven Wonders Birding, that you've been hearing about when I've been on the Asian bird fairs. And this is something that you can replicate as well. Again, the short tours. On my last tour now, that I just finished a week ago, I had a hardcore birder, and has uh, his wife is not a birder, but they like to go traveling together. So he was sort of spinning his wheels, said, I have to come back to Peru. I have to see my next birds here. But maybe I should bring Angela with me to see Machu Picchu. And I had told him about this idea of the short tours and with Machu Picchu, etc. And you can do that. So the key features to make this work, so you can combine birders and non-birders on the same tours, is that they are short. They have lots of wow factors, World Heritage sites, spectacular birds that everyone wants to see. The key birds and the key families are sort of attracting the birders, the bird families, unique bird families, some iconic mammals maybe, and lots of great photography opportunities, and above all, comfortable lodging. So use the best lodgings. Don't go cheap on that, and that way happy wife, happy life, as they say, right? So yeah, that was my last slide. Thank you very much, and welcome to Peru. So now, are there any questions? You can turn on mics, I guess. Okay. I'm not hearing anything here. Are you? So
Thank you very much, Gunnar. That was a very comprehensive discussion. Any questions, guys?
Yes, I have a question.
Okay, Bella.
hi,
Yeah,
Bella.
hi, Gunnar. Yeah, thank you for the nice presentation, firstly. And because I've never been to South America before, so I found that it can be a little bit confusion to me because all the South American countries they're so rich in birds. It's so diverse. So what is the most advantages of Peru compared with other countries in South America? That's my question. Thank you so much.
That is a very good question, and I think in Peru we do have the advantage is Machu Picchu, of course. It's an absolutely stunning place to visit, and it also has some good birding. And now I can understand that it's very confusing for people in Asia to if they've never been to South America, where should they start? There are so many options, and it's one of the reasons why I did these uh, birding Peru anytime itineraries, not to overwhelm, but to present the very best in one country. I think that's a strategy that should be emulated maybe also in other countries. So don't try to show everything, but show the best in one tour. And then if people get interested, well, they can make another tour further on. But it should include not only the birds. I think for people that have had uh, no exposure to South America before, because as you say, it's extremely confusing and the diversity is so high. uh, a mistake that a lot of people do is that they think that they will have to visit the Amazon first thing. Um, I would not recommend that because the birds in the Amazon can often be very difficult to see. There's too much forest in the way. So I would rather concentrate in open areas, and where they have specific setups for seeing the birds well, with good gardens and feeders, etc. And the cloud forest is much easier, gives you that tropical feeling still, but much easier to bird than the lowland rainforest.
Oh,
All
wow.
right. Thank you so much. I hope to meet you in Peru some days. Thank you.
Yeah, or if not, I'll see you in China.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you, Bella.
Any questions? Gunnar, I have a question. Since you just ended the 1 month tour, now than compared to previous.
No, I wouldn't say so. I think, well, maybe in some cases, but here in Peru right now, also we are at the beginning of the rainy season, or it has been going on for a while. So I think we actually had some trouble getting some birds out because we think they're on nests right now. So they were not some of them weren't very responsive to our playback. Having said that, though, I mean we still saw a vast number of birds. And having said that about the rainy season, we had surprisingly little rain. It rained when we were in the car or when at night. And I think it was only one morning that we had to change plans because of rain. And we just decided, okay, let's carry on to the next place. And we had beautiful birding in the afternoon instead. So well, we missed a few things there, but we made up for other things in the next area that we visited.
Questions?
Hello, Gunnar.
I have a quick question on the 7-day tour. So I understand that it's the best of the best, but it is it customizable? For example, I'm quite taken with a spatule tail, but my husband wants to see the bird with the mustache, the Inca tern. So I mean, is that feasible within the 7 days? Plus, if we wanted to see Machu Picchu, is that an extra 2 days? Is that feasible? So quite practical
Okay.
question.
Okay, no, that's a great question. And if you only have the 7 days, let's say you fly in and you reach, you will be flying east, so you will go through the time zone, I guess. So you will come to Peru almost on the same day as you're leaving. So say you could leave a Friday night or something like that and be in Peru on Saturday morning. So you could get you lose a few days coming back though, but effectively you do the 5-day tour in the north. Yeah, you have when you arrive, the Inca turn is just a couple of hours, well, just an hour from Lima, so you can easily do that in the morning before a flight, in an afternoon when you arrive, if you have that time. So that could be done as well. And then for Machu Picchu, it is possible to do that within 2 days from Lima. So you take a really early flight to Machu Picchu, to Cusco. You take a really early flight. They start leaving at 4 a.m. So you could basically be on the train and visit Machu Picchu on the same day you fly there. And this is a good idea also because then you don't get the high altitude of Cusco. Cusco at 3,300 meters. So you don't really want to stay there the first night. You want to get down into the valley. So visit Machu Picchu straight away, or you stay in the valley, yeah, and you can do that, and then you fly back the next day to Lima. So you can do that over 2 days. So 5 plus 2, and you could possibly fit in that Inca turn in the afternoon when you fly back from Machu Picchu, yeah, on the same day.
And for the remaining days, the statue tail can fit in.
Yeah, so the 5 days is for the spatule tail in the north, and there's lots of good photography opportunities there. So and you cannot really do the spatule tail in less than 5 days. So
Right.
that whole area, because you fly into an airport, which is about, well, if you go from that airport straight to the spatule tail, it'll take you about 8 hours to drive there, right? So what you do is you do stops on the way, but there are feeding stations for hummingbirds. You get in 5 days easily 40 species of hummingbirds, maybe up to 50 species of hummingbirds on those 5 days, plus a lot of tanagers that I showed you also on the pictures.
Great. I've connected with you on social media, so it would be easy to find you when it's time to go. Without
Okay,
See you next year.
see you next year.
Bye. See ya.
Bye-bye.
See you guys next year.
Stay
Bye-bye.
healthy. Okay.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, Gunnar.
So you
Next
invite
year.
ABF next year.
Merry Christmas.
Have a great weekend.
All the best, amigos. Hola,
Yeah,
John.
Gunnar.
Happy
Yeah,
birthday.
appreciate. Thank you very much.
Everyone.
Thank you all for
Bye-bye.
supporting. ABS loves you. Bye.
I love you too. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.